Is it your baby there?
Yes, but it's okay. It's good.
Maybe uh, she or he. I forget if you have a boy or girl.
That's a boy. Let me show you.
Yeah,
He's right here.
yeah.
Yes,
He can become the star of the show.
yes. Maybe he'll be the future host. Hey man, what's up? Have you seen Martin? Say hi.
Hello,
Yeah, intrigued by the
hello.
lights, right? You see Martin?
He's the
Huh?
future Hollywood star already.
Okay, baby, just help.
Intrigued by the lights,
Ah,
but definitely not by my face. Not that interesting.
yeah, wow. Hey Martin, how's it going? Again.
Uh, yeah, sorry, man. I have to get into the mood after this baby attack. So cute. Anyhow, hello, Kabila. Episode 3 here. Welcome back. Welcome to Beyond the Pivot, the episode that walks you through the life of entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship ecosystems in Africa and Europe. Kabila, how was your time in between episodes?
Great. I mean, on my end, right now it's quite hot back home. And so, over the past few weeks, I've been wondering why I've been struggling like with my eating patterns until I had a conversation with a friend of mine, a colleague actually, and he was like, you know what? I struggle each time weather changes. Like when it becomes hotter,
Mhm.
I'm always struggling to eat. And I'm like, that sounds like me, right? So it could be a thing. So it's really hot here. Just trying to cope. Yeah, and I've been sleeping in between meetings as well, just so that I can get by. But it's been a good week.
What does really hot mean for you? Because I feel like people can imagine different things. Like in Celsius, what is the average now?
Yes, sir. Let's check for you the temperature right now because I feel like I'm really sweating already. But let's check the temperature right now for Lusaka.
All right,
Boom.
all right.
Yes, hot is relative, right?
Exactly, exactly.
Yes, sir. There we go. We are at 28 degrees Celsius currently. The highest point was about 32 degrees today. So it's quite hot. And it looks like we might have
That's
some rain.
yeah.
We might have
And
some
for how
rain
long
as
has
well.
been for how long has it been like this?
So since about September, last weeks of second last weeks of September. So this
Gotcha.
period
As
is
in,
usually our
uh,
hottest time, which is through October, November, and our rainy season as well. Yeah.
okay. And you are in the southern hemisphere, therefore, like you will have a summer now, right? This wasn't even summer
Yes.
yet. This is
Yes.
just
This
like
is like
mild spring.
yes. This is our typical summer, which is filled with rain as well. So
God. All right. Well, I would say we have a opposite problem. Like not for many people. A lot of people are expecting and like winter. Not me. So our body is
mm,
adjusting from 30 degrees in the summer, then slowly going to about 20 degrees in the fall.
mm,
Now we are like at beginning of or mid November, going to December. It's gonna be windy. Kind of like wind mixed with rain around 0 degrees. You go outside, you're gonna want to go back in like immediately
mm.
because there is nothing to look at. Everything is the pretty colors of uh, fall leaves are gone. So you're like, oh my god, this is miserable. The depression of the darkness when the days are super,
Yeah.
super short. Now it's already dark almost outside. It's I don't know 4 p.m.
Oh wow.
Exactly. So I cannot wait for March or April when that spirit of the soul is lifted just because you can see outside until 6 p.m. kind of thing. You can literally
I
see how the days are getting longer.
I hear
So
you. I
that
mean, on our end as well, speaking about just weather, I know we'll get back into our topic. I think at this point, we should be expecting to have like heavy rains, but as you may know, due to climate change, it's become so unpredictable, right? So it's almost like everybody is just praying that we do have rains this year. We've talked, I
Mhm.
think, in the first episode, we also mentioned we're currently facing a drought, which has led to the low power supply from our main hydroelectric power plant. And so, what that does is based on projections, in order for it to be fully restored to capacity, we need to have very good rains this year for 2 seasons, this year and next year. And so far, things are not looking great. But
Ooh.
we hope everything improves and people think a lot more of sustainable ways to run, be it their farms. I think the most impacted are the smallholder farmers and
Mhm.
agriculture businesses. They cannot no longer rely on rain-fed irrigation methods. So there's a need for more investment into irrigation, solar as well. Yeah, just thought I add that in terms of the context of what's been happening
Yeah.
on our side.
So, what does the government plan to do in terms of the energy grids? Are they gonna build
Yeah,
some different type of power sources? Because if
yeah.
I remember correctly, again, it was 80% of the electricity in Zambia is generated by this hydropower plant, which just needs 2 years to replenish to certain level.
Yeah, absolutely. And the dam is shared between Zambia and Zimbabwe. But great question. Great question. I mean, right now where we're at, I think the government is quite open in looking towards the private sector to also utilize the infrastructure that's established by ZESCO. So ZESCO is the Zambia electrical company that distributes power across the country. And so recently they just put out that should be a bill, right? Yes, should be a
Hmm.
bill around opening up even the distribution infrastructure. So people from the private sector can generate and they have the infrastructure for ZESCO that they can distribute on. The biggest challenge we've had usually as over a long period of time as well has been that power is quite subsidized by our national company, and so they produce it at a high cost, but they have to sell it at a lower cost, right? So that has been a challenge to just sustain this infrastructure. And so you will see that, yes, we're in the middle of a crisis right now. It's the electricity, but you find that power is prioritized to higher paying clients like the mines that need to sustain jobs and operations, of course, the hospitals in different districts. But that's what we've been facing. And now we're at a point where we're trying to normalize it. Just recently, some electricity tariffs were pushed, adjusted upwards, depending on how much home consumption each household has. But for the middle income or middle average home, their power supply definitely they'll have to paying a bit more than they have
Hmm.
been. So it's kind of like we're trying to normalize that so that we can pay or what we pay reflects the actual cost or even above what it costs the electricity generating companies, ESCO, to cover their costs as well. Yeah, that's where we're currently at.
Yeah. So it looks like it is a struggle with no good solution. That there's always somebody who's gonna hurt by
Absolutely.
any solution you pick in the end. Uh, so do you see any role or for building like more power plants? Let's say, are there any bidders from like USA, China, Russia, European Union that like we're gonna buy more? Sorry, not buy, but build like based on government contracts more power plants in Zambia. Is there kind of some news search of these particular notices, or is
Mm-hmm.
there like life as usual before?
Yeah, great question. I mean, right now that's the topic of high interest. What we've seen grow is even from a household level, people are beginning to use a lot more green power. I think that works for a household. So we've seen the surge of solar power solutions. So just the home kit, right now it's costing about an average good kit is costing about 25,000 kwacha. How much would
Hmm.
that be in USD?
It's like $1,000,
About a thousand
$900.
dollars, right? Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
about $1,000 in terms of cost, and we've seen a lot more middle income households going for that power solution. At least it gets to cover their basic electricity needs. I think where it's becoming more apparent and where there's need for investment. I mean, if you're going to really grow an economy and you need industry, there's need for more actual power. There's not really actual power. Not that solar power is not actual
Yeah, yeah.
power, but you need
More
there's a lot more
stable.
power
Yeah.
demand exactly for industry because of the big machinery that goes into that. So there's definitely there's been some companies that have already been building. Sometimes already we have Western Power. I have to check how far they are with the building of their dam, which is a hydro plant, and we've also have had Mamba collieries. I know coal right now is a bad energy, but definitely they have been playing their part in adding to the distribution. So there's interest from a private sector to just see how much what other power options we can have beyond just solar, but all of these others that I've mentioned as well. Yeah.
looks like anybody interested in power, and solving this issue can go to Zambia, and they will be very much welcomed there to bring something to the table.
Absolutely, absolutely. What? Yeah, yeah. And what's I think that fits even for news on my end, right? Our power situation. What does that look like on your end? What's been going on?
Uh, so in Czech Republic, we have not similar issue because we have stable power and everything. We are not
Yep.
dependent on hydropower, but in here it's more about how green will you go, kind of thing. So getting more independent from the Russian-based energy sources, whether it's oil or gas, and then getting rid of the coal, which just leaves
Yeah.
you with a few options. Our country is not very well suited for solar power. It's not very well suited for wind power.
Yep.
Uh, so what we have left is nuclear energy. And
Mm,
in this country, we also have like how do you call it, like government owned energy company, like our own ZESCO. But this
yes.
is ZESCO is 30% private owned, which is publicly traded on our local stock exchange, and 70% government owned. And so
Okay.
these guys have the money to invest, let's say, to these like giant national projects, because they
Mm,
get money from both private and public sources, which also makes them difficult to run and understand. And you're always afraid they're going to make it 100% public, but that's a different story.
mm,
So right now, building nuclear power reactors is super expensive, and you never know if that number you get in the beginning is the final number. Most likely not, and it's gonna jump to some crazy amount in the end, which nobody knows if it's gonna be if it's gonna have a return on investment. But it's like
yeah.
a green option. And I just read that the chess is called our ZESCO, our national company for energy, is investing into acquiring 20% of Rolls Royce, but not the cars, but they're like energy sectors, which actually are developing some kind of like a smaller modular nuclear reactors. So these
Okay.
will require as much maintenance as the big ones, but they will be like fraction of the cost, and you will pretty much be able to build them with a couple of years. It will not have to be 30-year-old projects, to build it, which it is now. So since we have these six giant reactors in the country, and we can use the energy we have plus supply other countries around, if their
Mm,
wind and solar doesn't work at the moment, I feel like we invest in this company to gain the option to build more of those, kind of become the
yep.
center of power energy for the local countries around us, and kind of make it on a smaller amount of cost. So actually, it's also returnable on investment. The only issue with nuclear, only the issue with nuclear energy is that if it goes bust, you kill everybody around. So you have to be prone to no mistakes. And second thing
That's the
is,
highest downside to nuclear, right?
yeah, yeah, exactly. It's not a pretty picture in the end. And the second thing is what you're gonna do with the waste. Bunch of nuclear waste that you know how to store, you know how to build the storage for it, but like you have no clue what to do with it yet. So
Mm,
you are pretty much building. I don't know how deep, but like 100 meter deep kind of mine that's full of concrete and all these protective layers, and you put a bunch of used uranium into this, which is super radioactive, and that's going to be there for, I don't know, 500 years, just waiting until we figure out what to do with it.
mm,
So it's green, but it has these two for some bigger, for some smaller negative impacts. But then
yeah.
you can get rid of the coal, and you can install some where it's possible, some hydro, some solar, some wind energy uh, supply, generators or power sources as well. Yeah, but like I told you, when the sun goes down at 4 p.m., you will not make too much solar energy, especially
Mm,
if it's cold and rainy. And with the
100%.
wind, we don't have those big hills and valleys, or like big plans of land like in America or Austria or Germany. So yeah, pretty much dependent on getting the gas to generate power from burning gas or the nuclear energy. Every country has its own, but who knows what's going to happen.
No, great, great. I'm glad that you've mentioned that because I think, like I mentioned, I was just checking up your energy distribution, but this is like
Hmm.
2020 is the latest information I'm seeing where you're at. The highest source of energy was coal at 43% and
Hmm.
nuclear energy coming in at 33%, right? I think on
Yeah,
our
yeah, yeah,
end, we're on the green side, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
I think it's quite a controversial topic right now, talking about, let's say, coal, right? Which is,
Hmm.
like I said, dark energy as it's painted right now. But you can see that it does have its place. And if there's a possibility that there could be plants that are built with sustainability in mind, environmental sustainability in mind, definitely coal does have its place in terms of energy supply. To do a bit more research in terms of how much it would cost to run a coal plant in comparison to
Hmm.
a nuclear plant, right? And let's see if there's a plus or an upside to you having a coal plant in comparison to a nuclear plant, which could be actually quite costly, I'm imagining. Yeah, but
Yeah, I mean, the coal
that's
plant
where we're
is definitely
at.
going to be cheaper. Definitely cheaper, and
Yep.
I would say less risk. But uh, I would say we are trying to reduce it to go down on the coal and
Okay.
subsidize it with natural gas, like power plants. But then you always have a question where you're going to get that source of material for, because even for the nuclear energy you have to get those like uranium rods. I'm not an expert, I'm just playing with from information I have from podcasts, other podcasts than
Yep.
ours, of course. And you also you are dependent on somebody, because the uranium rods for running a nuclear power plant we are getting in from Russia, as I understood, because not many
Okay.
other countries produce it. Natural gas you can get it in liquid form from like United States, but we used to, before the war, we were getting it from Russia as well. So within like the 2-3 years there was a panic, like, there will be no electricity, it will be too expensive, people will not be able to afford it, because we need to cut it out from the Russian supply, and so on. So I would say coal is definitely good to have it there, just if the day is not rainy enough, windy enough, solar enough, because you can always burn coal. I have no
Yeah.
clue if you can turn it off and on, if that's even a possibility for such a giant thing. I have no idea. But I imagine that's where they are going with the modular nuclear reactors. So they will be small enough so a smaller team can operate them, and they will be cheap enough to build, essentially. So even more countries can afford them, in a sense.
Yeah.
And I can see that through, like, in the 100 years when they master the technology, maybe it will be so small that everybody will have their own small nuclear reactor in their garden, in their backyard. Who knows? But so far I feel like you have to have the mix, like you said, of the dark energy and the green energy to be for
Mm,
sure, and you should don't stumble or don't delay the development that you can have as a country.
I hear you. Great point. Great point.
Well, so we got kind of deep into a topic none of us understand that well. So
But I think it was
hopefully,
good
if
for
you,
perspective.
yeah, yeah. Well, if anybody hears this, tell us where we were wrong, and we will be happy to have you next time on.
Yes, please do let us know.
And now to our topic of the day. Last time we talked about the stereotypes that are around African entrepreneurs, and we thought the best thing to break the stereotypes is to showcase the success stories. Capivela told us last time about Lupiya, kind of
Yeah.
fintech startup that has been a success story so far. So we thought, let's talk about a few more, and then let's invite a few of these founders to the call within the next episodes. But let's go through more general stories, let's say. So, Capivela, what do you think that success looks like now? If you would be investor in a startup in Zambia, uh, is there a success just financial, or is it also beyond the financial returns?
Mm.
And how would you quantify it? How would you showcase it to potential investors interested in Zambian market and Zambian startup ecosystem?
Yeah. Thanks for that, Martin. Yes, this is now a topic that we like and enjoy. At least we do have some expert knowledge on it and happy to share. Unfortunately, we couldn't have Lupiya on today's episode, but definitely happy to share as many other success stories that we have or spotlight startups that we have in our current ecosystem. Right now, I mean, and we could have mentioned this before, I think the bigger opportunity that lies right now with investing in African startups, and I will mention Zambia specifically, which is our context and our market, right? Is I think the impact is direct beyond just a financial return. Whenever there's direct scale, the obvious is that you can see that there are always these families that get employed, right? Just a side story, I remember the time I was building my first startup, my first company, Spotless Africa, just having employed. So we were working with young youths aged between 18 and 24 as our frontline team that were providing specialized cleaning services. And I think there was a day that I saw one of our workers come to work with a laptop, right? He didn't say much, but he was producing his own music, his monga. That's the
Mhm.
guy's name. And for me, that was quite interesting because it was an indicator that this is someone who's going beyond just thinking about the basic needs, but they can go on to purchase other gadgets and devices that help them do other creative things like produce music, right? Which was like
Mhm.
super amazing. And that speaks to impact. And that's the case for many startups that you might be investing in. You will see a direct employment of youths and women from low income communities that get to serve and work in these spaces. But those are the obvious ones. But to go deeper, I think there's also the bigger opportunity because most of these markets are underserved, whichever sector that you think of. There's an opportunity for you to actually even formalize an entire value chain, right? It could be from an agriculture perspective, from a mining perspective, local mining perspective. There is an opportunity and there are opportunities for impact to formalize these value chains, and that sets up the companies to become household names in their respective sectors. So that's a broader opportunity and impact that I see, especially at this current stage where we're at, where most of our markets are in their infancy and nascent stages. Yeah.
Would you say that, or how would you actually recommend those people interested in Zambian startups to look into it? Like, okay, we talk about, I'll get that financial statements, the financial plan, stuff like that.
Mhm.
What should I be looking for in terms of returns or plans? Should I somehow quantify that this startup is going to generate 5 jobs, when making my decision or not? Is there anything that you would say this is the right number, this is the benchmark, that
Mm.
these startups are divided to, and divided to like successful and non-successful ones?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to impact, I do believe that is broad in itself and depends on what each one cares about. For some, it could be that they care more about environmental sustainability. And as they seek to make investments, that could be beyond the financial return, maybe a point that they would like to emphasize, right? Depending on what startup they're dealing with. Others, it could be a lot more inclusion of women, be it in the supply chain, be it at primary production. Others could be youths. Others, it could be reaching more marginalized communities as well, or vulnerable rural communities, right, that are
Hmm.
impacted by all sorts of things. So I think it's a case of just making sure from the get-go that you're aligned from a values perspective. Because remember, you cannot impose what you think is the right impact on a startup, right?
Hmm.
I think if a relationship started out that way, I think you will be setting up yourself for failure because it's almost like you're forcing these founders to care about a problem that probably only you care about, right? But from the get-go, if you can align and care about the same problem, I think that definitely sets you up from an expectations perspective. If it's employment, youth employment that you care about, and you know that you want to see a lot more increased number of youths being employed in the startup you're investing in, make it clear and allow the founders to report on that. I think one thing that we've done so well, especially with the startups that we work with, we always encourage investor updates. Usually monthly is what we encourage. And these updates don't just go to just investors themselves, but it's more to stakeholders and people that are interested in the mission of the companies. I like to believe, Martin, you should be receiving, Chalo has been part of Bongo Hive and you should be receiving some form of investor updates, right? And if you have been part of that process, I would like to believe founders will reach out to you and ask you questions like, what metrics would you like to see more in this particular update? They might change a few designs or anything like that, but it's a co-creative process where you say, what do you care about and what would you like to see more in the report? That would be my take on that in terms of reporting and how exactly you can track what the impact would be. Yeah, so it's very much about what you care about and making sure it's aligned with the values and mission of the startup. Yeah,
So we know. Thank you, Capella, for that. That everything is being reported. That's what the founders are being taught.
yeah,
Don't be shy to share the news. And now
absolutely.
to move forward on our success level or scale, or I don't know how to describe it, to identifying the good examples. Are
Yeah,
there any like dominant fields in Zambia that startups focus on, or is it like you said across the across the whole sectors? Just because you said
yeah,
you can build the whole value chains, so is it from agriculture to mining to health to food, or
yeah,
is there some like particular one that clusters people around it?
yeah. Great, great question. Um, from okay, how do I how do I respond to this? Well, there's opportunity. I like to believe in all sectors, but definitely we've seen where startups and just traditional businesses are focusing on, and we have quite interesting startups across all the sectors. So, for example, one I would like to even put out there because I do know they have been looking towards international expansion for the U.S. markets. Is a startup called Eleora Gems. Yes, I hope I didn't butcher their name. Oh my God, but they were part of
We can put a
our
link underneath the episode afterwards
Yes,
for
I'll
it.
definitely do that. Yeah, so the founders of the startup, which is a couple, brilliant and lovely guys, are working in the mining sector. Okay, so what we've seen, the sad story of Africa is that many African countries are being looted of their minerals, right? And they end up in all sorts of parts of the world and leaving very little value to the actual countries in which those minerals are extracted, right? And what we've seen with Eleora James is that they ethically source their gemstones locally. They cut and polish them locally and make them into fine pieces of jewelry, right? And they have been selling locally and they're looking towards international expansion. That in itself,
Mhm.
very niche market, locally made gemstones, polished locally in Zambia and sell to the world. So I think that in itself is a company that I see where I see value and I see as a success. They have been through Bongo Hive programs and I commend, I think they did receive some investment from the Zambia Business Angel Network. I can confirm that for you, but they've been through our programs and have been quite involved in what we do. Um, so basically, there's opportunity everywhere in fintechs as well. I think we talked about fintech, so I won't focus on that as well. Like I said, most of these startups are the ones that are building the critical infrastructure needed for other startups and companies to thrive. For example, those in manufacturing and e-commerce, you do know that they need this infrastructure of financial systems at work. So that's where you see all of these startups coming in from a digital perspective. Logistics as well. I think we talked about Afri Online, which helps e-commerce businesses just with storage and also helping them with the logistics. So you store whatever products you have at Afri Online, which is a wholesale, and whenever you have an order, they get to fulfill it for you from a delivery perspective. So all of these are innovative startups, and most of them, like I said, are building the critical infrastructure on which others will be riding on. So did I answer your question, Martin, in terms of
Yeah, you
success
did.
stories?
You
Yeah,
pretty much said that it's not really one cluster. It's where
yeah,
opportunity can be found, and opportunity can be found almost anywhere now in Zambia, since it's such a
absolutely.
young population and the value chains are still formating. And
Yeah,
I have to
and
say that, yeah,
yeah,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, go ahead.
Now,
Go ahead.
I wanted to say a little anecdote. When I was in Lusaka, I went to this a gallery place, and they had a gem store, like beautiful gemstone shop
Mm.
there. And I know that Zambia is like one of the only place where you can buy this emerald that's green. I forgot what's the
We
name.
have the most beautiful emerald in the world.
Okay, I'm sure Botswana says the same thing about the diamonds, and stuff. But my point is that it's like, yeah, I'll
Yeah.
buy some small ones, at least for my wife. And I was like, okay, I saw the price tag and I just want to buy myself a coffee. And that was
Yeah.
about it. So I'm sure that these companies, if they take the mission of keeping the value in Zambia, they are doing well.
Yeah.
It was I wouldn't say full of people, but I wasn't the only one there for sure. And there were a lot of, I would say, tourists like me going there to look for, but more wealthy tourists than me, to look
Yeah.
for some gifts for their loved ones at home. So
Absolutely. Yeah, like I said, maybe I just wanted to add to the context of what we're talking about with the power situation,
Mhm.
which is just this effect of climate change. I think I wouldn't go by without mentioning one of the startups that I think is also amazing there. They should have over 100,000 farmers that are listed and active on their platform. It's called AgriPredict. I don't know, have we talked about
Mhm.
AgriPredict?
No, we
But
haven't.
basically, so with the issue of climate change, one thing that happens, so like this period from October all the way to about April, we're supposed to be having rains, okay? And close to 60% of the rural population of people living in rural areas get to depend on farming, okay? And so what happens is the primary focus for them is rain-fed irrigation. Because that's the case, and now that we're having unpredictable rain patterns, it becomes very difficult for them to plan how exactly when to plant, when to weed, when they should be planning their harvest. Like all of that cycle is just disturbed. So we have a startup called AgriPredict. I think they do quite some amazing stuff. So just any farmer with a smartphone, they get to just take a picture of your crop and it gives you insights if there's any disease that's on your plants. If anything is detected within a particular area, I think we have things like armyworms, which usually get to infest the fields of many farmers. They get to send and distribute that information to the entire community of farmers in a particular region. So
Mhm.
they are all of these startups that are coming up that are helping solve some of these challenges that we're having to make farmers a lot more resilient and adapt to climate change. And so, like I said, you can see that we have a broad range of startups all the way from mining through to agriculture and everything in between. Yeah.
Mhm. Is there any success story that comes from your mind that went from like local, maybe in bongo hives incubation, to international? Maybe it didn't even go through bongo hives. It's just like,
Yeah.
it's from Zambia. But is there anything that comes to your mind, so like right away?
Yeah. You know what's interesting? When I saw that question, it made me think more broadly about where the current stage where we are, because I was like, which startups can I point to that have expanded internationally? And why am I not just having off the top of my head quick name come to mind, right? And for me, I think it just made me think about, and I've mentioned this multiple times, our ecosystem is still in its infancy from a startup perspective, and we need a lot of things to be working. Imagine us having just set up our local angel investment network just about 2, 3 years ago, right? And also pushing for a startup bill, which is just some regulatory framework that enables us to create a framework in which startups can operate, in which we receive investment as well from a startup perspective. So, like all of these are things that we're putting in place and great progress. And I think we're on the verge of seeing a lot more startups starting to scale internationally. Like I mentioned, startups like Afri Online, for example, which is like Afri Delivery as well, at a point where they're a household name. Almost everybody knows Afri Delivery, and they're exploring to get into South Africa as their next market. We've had a company called Boso right now. They are trying to bridge the gap of the housing gap in terms of how many houses we're building based on the need for houses in Zambia and Africa at large. Uh, they're already established in Zambia, doing so well, and they're seeking to expand into the next set of countries. Like I mentioned last time, we have Lupiya, who've already launched and are operating in Tanzania. So we are at the verge of seeing this breed of entrepreneurs that are really ambitious and trying to leverage the opportunity that not just Zambia presents, but Africa in itself. So yeah, that would be my response to that question. And I appreciate that you asked it. Yeah.
I mean, it really has to be also defined what it means to go international. Since we talk about it, the Southern Africa part, not the country, has 300
Yeah.
million people there, as a market. Therefore,
Yeah.
you don't have to go international, let's say, to sell in the United States or Europe, you can go to the countries around you, pretty much like you described. Go to South Africa, go to Tanzania, go to Botswana, Namibia, Zimbabwe, and so on. And
Absolutely.
that's already the expansion, I would say. Just like when we talk about going international in Czech Republic, we say we sell in Germany, which is a next door
Yeah.
country, but giant one, but still a next door country. We don't automatically expect that we conquered half the world.
And also to add, so that's from a customer reach perspective, but you'll be interested to learn that most of these startups, their teams are quite distributed internationally. They have teams
Hmm.
across Africa, some developers are in Kenya, some in Nigeria. Their teams themselves are quite from a continental level, with some having them even outside the continent. From a team's perspective, even investors as well. Most of them have investors from different markets, and I think that's what uh, I think that's what presents them the opportunity to expand. The more they have even more international partners, I think it gives them the opportunity to see what other markets get to offer, and also have some form of insight into what markets are similar in which they could expand to. So I just thought I add that to the conversation. Yeah.
Sure. Do you see any patterns in these startups you talked about in terms of the team? Do people usually hire, I don't know, programmators from Kenya, customer service from Nigeria? Is there some pattern where these specialties come from
Mm.
for these startups, or is it completely different every time, like a new case?
I think what's outsourced the most, or really not outsourced, but basically what we see having where we see international teams is on the software development side, software engineers. I think the engineering side enables them to pick the best talent from across the continent to either be co-founders or just key members of the team, which gets to do the
Mhm.
engineering of the platforms that they will operate on. Yeah, that's a major one that we get to see, to have international teams.
So, is there anything going on in terms of kind of popularization of the software development in Zambia? It, the, so you guys will grow your own kind of generation of software developers down the line, so you don't have to rely on these, like you said, outsourcing capabilities of other countries.
Yeah, I mean, context to building an ecosystem, the building of talent is also part of ecosystem building, right? Like that's something that we need to focus on. And I think we've seen quite a number of even international companies interested in building local ecosystems. For example, Meta used to do this to the developer secos, which were being hosted at Bongo Hive. For those that don't have context on that, what that looks like is where we have key developers from the local ecosystem inviting other junior developers or those that are aspiring to take that up, and just hearing and learning from them, almost like career talks as well. And they get to
Mhm.
learn from each other, from that community of developers. That hasn't continued from Meta per se, but we've seen still the need for us to have this network of developers. The other thing is startups now don't just compete amongst themselves for this talent, the local talent, right? And I might have pointed this out maybe even in one of our conversations. So because Africa, we're at this interesting stage where we have a very young population, and as you may know, most of these engineers are quite young. Many international or Western countries get to see this as some form of cheap labor. Okay.
Mhm.
And so they look to us, our countries, to go and outsource also the best talent in terms of software developers that need to work for their companies. And that kills the local markets because what they call cheap is not cheap in the local context, and we talked about this,
Yeah.
I think. So that's a downside to it, but definitely we continue to see efforts in which we can collaborate with universities. Currently we have partnerships with Cavendish University, which is based in Lusaka. We have another great university, University of Lusaka, that we have MOUs with. We've also collaborated with the Copperbelt University, which is the second largest university in the country based on the Copper Belt, where we collaborate on projects. We've also worked with University of Zambia, which is the biggest university in the country, and all of these efforts where we pull in young people. We want them to be excited about startups, but we also want them to be excited about technology. So
Mhm.
yeah, definitely building that part of the ecosystem, which is talent building, is critical and something that we also focus on.
So, is there any story that stuck to your heart? From the talent building side, perhaps you inspired some youth in Cooperbelt University, and then he came to or she came to later on, and you showed them on their merry way, and now they have a startup running, or maybe they already sell internationally. Is there any story like that you would like to share?
Great question. I love that. I'm just thinking, okay, so which one do I pull? Maybe AgriPredict. I mentioned AgriPredict, right? So we
Yeah.
have what we call innovation challenges. So what an innovation challenge looks like is we'll work with a partner. It could be GIZ, which is just a development aid from Germany. I cannot
Hmm.
pronounce that.
Don't worry about it. Most of the world cannot. That's why they call it GIZ in the end.
GIZ, yes. So we could work with GIZ, and what that looks like is we'll put out what are called challenge statements. So the program can focus on solving certain very specific ecosystem, not really ecosystem, market problems or challenges. In this case, it was an innovation challenge on climate solutions, okay, digital climate solutions. And we had these two guys, lady should have involved as well, that came up with a solution to say, hey, we want to help farmers easily detect diseases on their mobile phone. We're like, oh, okay, sounds great. Through the innovation ideation phases that the team gets to run them through to achieve a problem solution fit, lots of ideation, thinking through the business model and what that would look like. That was the birth of AgriPredict. And now today, AgriPredict, like I mentioned, has over 100,000 farmers listed on their platform and have been existing over 3 years. Is this their fifth, over
Mhm.
5 years? Over 3 years. Yeah, I'm confident about over 3 years. And it's currently being run by an amazing friend of mine, Cassandra. Cassandra, if you're watching this, we have to sit for coffee. But yeah, so Cassandra leads her team at AgriPredict, and they have been doing an amazing work. That's just an example. We've had other examples as well where we've seen end-to-end support, and this is what we seek to build from just ideation, incubation, and acceleration. We've had similar startups coming through, like Green Giraffe, by the way. Have I talked about Green Giraffe, Martin?
No, no.
I
You're full of
haven't. Wow.
treasures. You're full of treasures today.
Green Giraffe. I love Green Giraffe. They sell local Zambian fruits basically
Mhm.
and snacks. So think of it like a local Zambian snacks. They're called Green Giraffe, and it's being run by the CEO Miche. She's an amazing lady with her husband as well, Joseph. They are running together. So the time that they came through, Miche came through, it was through an innovation challenge. Again, we're looking for climate smart solutions that help farmers even become a lot more resilient to the effects of climate change. So she sources the produce, local indigenous plants, fruits from farmers in Zambia. They get to dry them and repack them and resell. She moved from that program, which was just ideation. She went through a Women in Tech program where they were now building an e-commerce platform for what they're doing. And they later on went to an accelerator program, which is called the Mentor Pitch program. Yes, I talked about Mentor
Mhm.
Pitch.
Yeah, you did.
They won Mentor Pitch. They won Mentor Pitch and got on follow-on investment. Please confirm. I hope I'm not. My internet is still good. Are you able to hear me, Martin?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yes, it's beginning to rain, which is great for the farmers. Sad for my internet. Yes, so they moved to Mentor Pitch and actually won Mentor Pitch, which was, I think, super amazing. And that's the type of support that we seek to provide. I can't remember was the investment announced? I'm not sure it was announced, so I can't say it out here, but it was quite significant
Mhm.
investment, a generous investment that they got from the network.
That's great. Like you said, it's beginning of this. It's pretty much the first generation or second generation of startuppers, and as these people are becoming wealthy, successful, maybe selling their businesses, I feel like they will encourage others to do the same thing. Therefore, it's maybe looks small, maybe it looks like you said, to your mind it's just starting, but the examples you are giving shows that it's very much on the way and already happening. So it's just a matter of time, before even for you it will look big. I feel like for people that are in that environment, usually they tend to downplay it. It's nothing, it's just these couple people doing something. in the end, it's a big operation, and I know it is since you guys have been operating the Bongo Hives for, I don't know, 17 years. It's all for profit. It's not government
13 years,
subsidized.
Martin.
13
13
years.
years.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
sir.
So over a decade. So it's a giant operation with great amount of stories there.
To only trying to make more impact. I think there's a lot of work that we can do to help businesses grow in the country. And so, yeah, we're always looking for partners. Whoever is interested in what we do or is just as crazy and passionate about what we care about, please do reach out to us.
And Kabila, just save me the best stories for the last, just for the podcast, and we can share it with the world. So if somebody reaches out, you will hear it here first. You will get to meet Green Giraffe and AgriPredict and Afri Online, all these businesses here first.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We'll give you as much information to you. Yes, we'll share as much information as we have. Because I mean, at the end of the day, it's about the entrepreneurs, it's about the ecosystem, and we want to just make sure that our startups are successful and our businesses are successful. I do know that there's a side of startups, which is something that many people do get to relate with, but there's massive opportunities even in just manufacturing. I have, yeah, so manufacturing, just building a lot more products. I think, Martin, you were here. If you open a fridge in a supermarket here in Zambia or many other countries in Africa compared to a fridge in Europe, where you're spoiled for choice and options. In fact, sometimes the times that I've been in Europe, I just walk away. I'm like, I don't know what to buy. You know what I mean? Because you get this
Yeah.
paralysis for just so many options. But basically, there's opportunity to build more brands and products, lots of opportunities for value addition, be it in agriculture, many other products. So it's not just a startup scene that has the opportunity, but there's opportunity even with the other startups and will be other companies. And we'll be happy to share those that we think are building something unique, viable, and really creates an impact in the market that I think would be of interest to you. Yeah.
Well, to be honest about the fridge, I was in ShopRite in Lusaka, and I feel like you have a bigger selection in most of the stuff than we do. So just don't you think all are the same? I just cannot. Just the
Okay.
freshness of the fruit and vegetables and even other stuff you guys had was great.
Awesome.
Anyhow, the prices of it, different story, but there was definitely the variety there.
Yes, sir.
Kavila, to kind of leave our listeners or even the startups with the last kind of message, what do you think is the like one commonality that you can pinpoint, that you see in between the successful startups from Zambia? Is there one,
Mm.
two things they have in common?
Yeah, great question. Definitely. Again, I will bring this back to entrepreneurship support. So one thing that we see common is most of them are working as a team. They have a solid team. Uh, it's very difficult building a startup, I would like to believe. And if a founder is building it alone, usually it's just too much for a founder. And we've seen a lot more successful founders, and this is the same across the world, is they have a team behind them. And so that's everything that you will see in most of the startups that I've mentioned. Um, there's an eagerness to learn in most of them. So you will see that they've committed themselves to learning and being part of programs. For example, Lupiya, which I mentioned, they haven't directly been through a Bongo Hive program, not that I can think of, but they have definitely been part of other programs within the ecosystem from other incubators, right? Afri
Mhm.
Online just completed the investment roadshow to Japan that we had. I think I talked about that program, the
Yeah.
Meet the Toshika's program. Green Giraffe, like I said, end to end from ideation, incubation, all the way acceleration. So just that eagerness to learn and being clear, you can see that the founders are really passionate and clear about the mission of what exactly they're trying to solve, I think is a key commonality. And something that we're also just trying to sharpen and help the founders a lot more. The hunger is there, is international expansion. Okay, most of them are not just solving a problem for Zambia, but they are seeing to how exactly they can expand internationally. And we're here to just see how best we can support them with that. So those are the commonalities that I get to see. And like I said, I think the other bit which ties to impact, most of them are very clear about the impact that they would like to make in the markets that they're operating in. I think from Dunia, Chalo, Martin, you should at least know a bit more information there. Just formalizing the last mile distribution of healthcare. I think
Mm.
that's really impactful work. When you hear the stories that are being shared, the lives that are being impacted, it's really touching. From an agriculture perspective, the income growth that the farmers get from just supplying these local fruits that are later on made into healthy and tasty Zambian snacks. There's so much impact there. The ethically sourcing of local minerals as well from small miners in the country to build these beautiful gemstones and jewelry pieces by Eleora Gems. I mean, all of that is impact, and all of these startups are very, very specific and keen on making that impact beyond just the financial returns that they get to make with their businesses. So that's a commonality that I see. And of course, there could be other things, but those are the ones that definitely do stand out.
We will list all those businesses you mentioned today under the episode so people can see their websites themselves. And
Yes, sir.
thank you for summarizing the things that people that want to have a successful startup from Zambia or also other countries pretty much around the world can follow on. Those are, I would say, actionable anywhere. Having a good team, focus on impact, be eager to
Yeah,
learn. Those things do not just apply to your particular country. I think it's
absolutely.
true anywhere,
And
which is
whoever's
great.
interested, all these founders, we should have their decks, pitch decks. If you're interested in anyone, I can maybe just ask for updated decks, but we have all their pitch decks. And if anyone is interested, we can send it to them because these founders are always looking and interested in meeting new people. We can make the introductions and we can take up the conversation.
So, Kabbalah, if somebody is interested, where should they find you and how they should let you know?
Okay, if you want to find me, just get on a plane and you find me in Lusaka. If you've got the budget, always happy to welcome people in our beautiful country and have a conversation. But if you'd like to have a chat online as well, I'm very active on LinkedIn. Just feel free to reach out on LinkedIn and we can pick up a conversation from there. Yeah, so, or Martin, if you meet Martin and you know him, please, he can give you my contact details and we can get connected.
True.
Where should
But
people
I
find you,
recommend,
Martin? Yeah, go
first,
ahead.
I would say I recommend going on a plane and meeting Kabbalah in Lusaka because he can take you to some good restaurants and show you pretty good food. But if you
100%.
cannot do it, if you cannot do it, I understand. Reach out to me and I will introduce you. You guys can find me on LinkedIn as well, or through this podcast. There is my contact information, my email. So feel free to reach out, and we will introduce you to Capvilla, direct contact, or and to the startups you mentioned today. So thank you guys for being with us today for another episode, and we are looking forward to the next one. Thank you, Capvilla.
Take care, guys, and thanks for tuning in. See you next time.